It didn't arrive in a clean package with a well-known brand label, but in a worn black plastic bag retrieved from a restaurant trash can. The chicken pieces were cold, dirty, and probably already infested with worms. But for thousands of residents in the Philippine slums, those chicken pieces were no longer leftovers. They called them pagpag, the last edible meal before hunger turned to death. Because in their world, eat or die wasn't a metaphor, but a daily choice of irony and patheticness. The Philippines, an archipelago rich in culture and history, indeed harbors a tragic social paradox. On one side, there are luxurious shopping malls, skyscrapers, and international standard restaurants thriving in downtown Manila. But just a few kilometers from the city center, life is very different. In neighborhoods like Tondo, Baseco, and Payatas, the landscape changes to rows of cardboard houses, rusting tin roofs, and children playing in puddles of sewage-laced water. And from this harsh reality, a dish called pagpag was born. Thus, Manila's slums became not just a symbol of poverty, but a kind of laboratory of life where people harness their creativity and resilience to simply survive. Amidst the pungent stench of garbage, pollution, and limited facilities, people built a life from the crumbs of civilization. The word pagpag in Tagalog means to shake off or brush off dust. But in the context of food, its meaning is far deeper and ironic. Pagpag is a term for leftovers from fast food restaurants, especially chicken, taken from the trash, cleaned as best as possible, then recooked and sold cheaply, or even eaten directly by families of scavengers. But how something socially considered disgusting could become a part of everyday life lies in two things: extreme poverty and brutal social inequality. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Philippines experienced a surge in the population of urban poor, living in informal settlements. In times of extreme hunger and lack of money, people no longer have a choice. In turn, fast food, restaurant, trash cans, once considered useless, quickly become a valuable resource. Initially, pagpag was consumed by scavengers and informal sector workers. However, over time, and as more and more people fell into poverty, pagpag became a mass phenomenon. Many families even completely depended on pagpag for their daily nutritional needs. This food-gathering process is quite risky, but it has become a daily routine for thousands of people. Usually, in the morning, pagpag collectors would visit the trash bins of large fast food restaurants like Jollibee, KFC, and the like. With hopeful faces and plastic gloves in their hands, they sorted through discarded food. Fried chicken, burgers, leftover rice, and even spoiled potatoes. Everything was gathered like precious treasures. These foods were then taken home or sold directly to collectors. Then, in cramped homes converted into kitchens, the food is washed, sometimes with just plain tap water. Afterward, it's recooked with garlic, cooking oil, and sometimes soy sauce, and sold in small packages. This food is usually sold for 20 to 30 pesos, or about 50 cents. A very cheap price, but well worth the risk. Health experts and nutritionists strongly condemn the practice of consuming pagpag. This food not only contains germs and bacteria such as E. coli and Salmonella, but can also cause digestive illnesses, food poisoning, and even fatal infections. However, for those with only one option, pagpag is a lifesaver. A poor housewife in the Philippines clearly admitted that she knew the food was unhealthy. Despite this, she was more afraid of her child dying of hunger than stomachache. These words may sound quite extreme, but such is the reality of life on the fringes of humanity. When the state fails to provide a social safety net, people create their own solutions, even if they come from the trash. Walking through the narrow alleys of Tondo or Payatas, you'll find small houses with rusty tin roofs and only plywood walls. Among these houses, some have simple stoves with large, steaming pots. And this is where Pagpag is transformed into affordable home cooking. Here, food gathered early in the morning is washed, boiled, and refried, or mixed with cheap vegetables from the night market. This dish then emits a distinctive aroma, not the aroma of meat or vegetables, but the aroma of the boundless struggle amidst poverty. Thus, for many poor people in Manila, Pagpag is more than just a simple food. It embodies hard work, mental resilience, and a symbol of a mother's love for her children. Pagpag also mirrors a social reality that many people prefer not to see. It reveals the unequal distribution of wealth. While some people throw away the abundant food scraps, others welcome them with gratitude and hope. And more than that, Pagpag is a form of silent resistance. In desperate situations, the poor demonstrate that they don't give up easily. They create ways to survive by utilizing the scraps of a system that has never been on their side. That's why the generation that grew up with Pagpag is a tough one. They learned about hunger earlier than they learned to read. They know that food on the table isn't something they can rely on every day. For them, getting a piece of leftover chicken from a fast food restaurant is a great fortune and a luxury. With it, they can laugh, joke, and devour Pagpag with gusto, as if it were the best food in the world. And in a sense, it is, because it's the only food they have. And ironically, these children also understand the risks of Pagpag. Due to the high demand and need, Pagpag has become a commodity. An informal network exists that regulates the collection, processing, and distribution of Pagpag in urban poor areas. Some families even make this their primary livelihood. Usually, a collector works with a restaurant employee. These employees secretly set aside leftover food and give it to the collector for a small fee. Behind the practice of consuming Pagpag is a structured underground economic system. This chain begins with the source of the waste, namely large restaurants that throw away leftover food. From there, the initial collectors rescue the food before it mixes with other waste. They sell it to collectors who have a loyal customer base. Workers in this chain do not receive a fixed wage, but they are able to survive. Although illegal and risky, this chain remains alive and thriving because there are no other economic alternatives for them. Pagpag is usually sold in small plastic bags or wrapped in banana leaves. And at a very low price, this food is accessible to anyone. For casual laborers, pedicab drivers, beggars, and other informal workers, it is a daily solution for lunch. In the Pagpag black market, there are no taxes and no business permits. All that exists is hunger and the struggle to survive, according to a local journalist who investigated this practice. On the other hand, the Philippine government is not blind to this phenomenon. Several programs have been launched, such as providing free meals in schools, establishing public kitchens in slum areas, and even banning the practice of consuming food from trash. However, these efforts are often unsustainable or even hampered by corruption and bureaucracy. During certain administrations, the government declared it would eliminate Pagpag from the Philippines. However, this statement is ironic. What really needs to be eliminated is not the food itself, but rather the conditions that give rise to the need for Pagpag. Therefore, to this day, there has been no truly successful systemic solution. Poverty remains high, food distribution is unequal, and millions of people still rely on the informal economy. For many in the upper middle class, Pagpag is disgusting. They refuse to even imagine it, let alone eat it. But for those who live in it, Pagpag is not an option, it is a necessity. Some activists even suggest calling Pagpag not waste food, but reclaimed leftovers. But changing the term doesn't change the harsh reality. In a world of abundance, millions of people still live on leftovers. Pagpag may seem horrific to the outside world, But turning a blind eye to it or condemning it is clearly not a humane solution. What is needed is an understanding that Pagpag is not the root of the problem, but rather the result of a failed socio-economic system. Pagpag is merely a symptom of a larger disease: structural poverty, inequitable food distribution, and systematic economic inequality. As long as there are people throwing away excess food, and as long as there are those who cannot eat at all, Pagpag will persist. Not because they want it, but because they have no choice. In the Philippines, this food is called Pagpag. But in other places, food with this kind of substance always exists, but with different names.